We already talked about the ideal intake of protein and fat, so let's also discuss how many carbs you should eat for optimal performance. What you need to understand is that carbs are the only non-essential macronutrient, so in theory, you could survive without eating any carbs, which means there is no minimum intake that I can give you. But just surviving is not our goal, and because of all the benefits that we can get from eating quality carbs, it definitely makes sense to include them in our diet. In fact, for athletes, not getting enough carbohydrates will lead to worse workout performance, less muscle growth, and more fatigue and sluggishness. So while you technically don't have to eat them, cutting carbs from your diet completely is usually not a good idea. So the question is, how many carbs should you regularly eat to get all the benefits I talked about earlier? The ideal carb intake is based on several factors, and in order to figure out exactly how many carbohydrates you need, we would have to do a lot of blood tests and other measurements. Fortunately, even without knowing your exact measurements, we can still narrow in on the range using only two measures, your body weight and your training intensity. As you can see from the table, your carb intake will increase with training intensity. The harder your workouts, the more carbs you will need to consume to fuel your muscles. As a general rule of thumb, if you do light workouts, try to get 1 to 1.25 grams per pound of body weight. For moderate workouts, go with 1.25 to 1.5 grams per pound of body weight, and for hard workouts, go with 1.5 to 1.75 grams per pound of body weight. But of course, you're asking yourself right now, what are light, moderate, and hard workouts, right? Light workouts will usually be around 30 minutes or less, and it's a workout with less than 10 working sets if you're lifting weight. Moderate workouts are anything between 30 to 60 minutes and more than 10 working sets if you're lifting weights. And lastly, hard workouts are anything more intensive than a moderate workout, whether that means longer workouts or more working sets. Please keep in mind that this isn't an exact science, so you will have to decide for yourself where you lie on the scale. I personally always like to train very intensively, even if it's only for 45 minutes, which is why I still consume my carbs according to the hard workout category. Now, before we go on to the next lesson, let's talk about one more thing. Can you eat too many carbs? This is a difficult question, not only because carbs have been vilified in recent years by many popular diets, such as the keto or Atkins diet, but also because too many will differ from individual to individual, and also on the type of carb that you eat. As a general rule for most active people and athletes, there does not seem to be such a thing as an excessive carb intake, as long as you also get enough protein and fat. We know from studies done with endurance runners and vegetarians that diets very high in carbohydrates can be very healthy in the long term. What this assumes, though, is that you get your carbs from quality sources, such as whole grains, rice, oats, and potatoes. These are all complex carbs that do not lead to sudden spikes in insulin and blood sugar levels, which is the case for simple carbs like candy and sugar. What this means is that if you exercise a lot and need the extra energy, then you can definitely consume large amounts of carbs as long as you get them from complex carbs and also stick to the ideal protein and fat intakes that I talked about before. Also keep in mind that some people's stomachs simply don't react well to a high carb diet. They will feel full, bloated, and somewhat tired after they eat carbs. If this applies to you, I recommend you keep your carb intake at the level in the table and fill your outstanding calories with healthy fats.